Hello, everybody. Let me get a little light there. That's better. Today we are looking at compromise and the Constitution, and we're looking at the online notes. So if you're learning online, this is what you see. If you're learning in the classroom but you happen to be sick, you can either work on these notes or you can fill the notes in if you have your binder at home. Your binder notes look a little bit different, but they'll both work. So when you're working on this, you're going to use this document right here, Handouts Packet, Compromise, and the Constitution. Both of them will be together. In Google Classroom, if you click on online notes, you'll see this video, you'll see the packet, and you'll see the worksheet. So here's what we have. We have the Articles of Confederation just aren't working, and we know that, and we need to make some changes to that. And so we start to make those changes. And as they come together, to figure out, what are we going to do? Are we going to modify the articles? Are we going to change and go a different direction? There's a lot of compromise that has to happen. There's different groups with different opinions, and that can be difficult, but they find solutions by working together to find, okay, what can we live with? And so in the end, we're going to end up with the Constitution, and that's because different opinions were heard and they found out a solution, which is great. So here we go. Main thought. When the Articles of Confederation were failing, Americans had many ideas on what should be done. Many did not agree, including the founding fathers who worked so hard to gain independence. We survived as a nation because we were able to make compromises that ultimately led to the creation of the Constitution. This new constitutional government still leads us today. We will focus on 3 areas where compromise allowed different viewpoints to work together. All right, so the first part, new ideas were coming out on how we fix this problem. And we had 2 plans come forward, the New Jersey plan and the Virginia plan. They were different, to say the least. But they were able to figure out how to make those plans come together as well. So here are the 2 plans, okay? We will start with the Virginia plan. And for the Virginia plan, you have to tell me how many branches are there, how many houses, voting is based on what, do larger small states like it, and why? So here we go. The Virginia plan proposed instead a legislative branch consisting of 2 chambers, a bicameral legislature. 2 chambers would mean 2 houses, in which the states would be represented in proportion to their quotas of contribution or to the number of free inhabitants. All right, let's break that down. Basically what they're saying here is, vote the number of members you have based on your population. So if you have a higher population, you get more members. If you have a lower population, you get less members. You want more members to have more power, obviously. States with a large population like Virginia, which was the most populous state at the time, would thus have more representation than small states. Of course, Virginia loves this plan. They get a ton of say in the government. A small state like New Jersey or Rhode Island will get next to none. Large states supported this plan, and smaller states, which feared losing substantial power in the national government, generally opposed it, preferring an alternative put forward by the New Jersey delegation on June 15th. The New Jersey plan proposed a single-chamber legislature in which each state, regardless of size, would have 1 vote, as under the Articles of Confederation. So let's look at each part here. The branches, there's 3, the legislative, the executive, the judicial. The legislative was more powerful as it chose people to serve in the executive and judicial branches. So 3 branches, legislative most powerful. The legislature has 2 houses, it's bicameral. The House of Representatives was elected by the people, and the Senate was elected by the state legislature. Both were represented proportionally. So it has 2 houses, but each state gets votes in each house based on their population. So, Virginia might have 20 votes in the House of Representatives and 20 votes in the Senate, and Rhode Island and New Jersey may have 1 vote in the Senate and 1 vote in the House of Representatives. So small states are at a clear disadvantage here. But a state like Virginia would say, hey, we deserve more votes. We have a lot more people. So other powers, the legislature could regulate interstate trade, strike down laws deemed unconstitutional, and use armed forces to enforce laws. So we have The interstate trade issue is taken care of there. They can use their armed forces to enforce laws. So now they have some power there. So this gives a lot more power to the national government. So when you look at this section right here, you have all your answers. Okay, we went through all those. So voting, is it based on like, for this one, you should be looking at like, is it equal per state? Is it based on population? Is it based on something else? What do you see there? Now the New Jersey plan, same questions. Number of branches, number of houses, number of votes per state. Who likes it, large or small states? And why does this group favor it? Here we go. The New Jersey plan was a proposal for the structure of the United States government proposed by William Paterson on June 15, 1787. The plan was created in response to Virginia plan's call for 2 houses of Congress, both elected with proportional representation. The less populous states were adamantly opposed to giving most of the control of the national government to the larger states, and so proposed an alternative plan that would have given 1 vote per state for equal representation under one legislative body. The small states are scared. They look at the Virginia plan and they say, hey, this is going to be an issue. Virginia is going to have more power than 4 or 5 small states together. And so they create their own plan. And in this plan, each state gets 1 vote. Now, New Jersey loves this. They have a small population in comparison to big states. And they're just as equally powerful as Virginia. So they love that. Large states hate it. Under the New Jersey plan, the organization of the legislature was similar to that of the modern-day United Nations and other like institutions. This position reflected the belief that the states were independent entities, and as they entered the United States of America freely and individually, so they remained. The New Jersey plan also gave power to regulate trade and to raise money by taxing foreign goods. So they feel that each state should have 1 vote because each of them decided as an independent group to come into the nation. And if you look at a few other things here, they're going to regulate trade, which is good, and they're going to get tax money by taxing foreign goods. So that's where their tax money is going to come in. So trying to solve those problems from the Confederacy. Branches, 3 branches, legislative, executive, and judicial. The legislative appoints people to serve in the executive branch, and the executive branch selects the justices of the Supreme Court. So it actually takes a lot of those ideas from the New Jersey plan, which is interesting. Legislature, 1 house, unicameral. States will be represented equally, so all states have the same power. So there's only 1 house there. And the national government could levy taxes and import duties, regulate trade, and state laws would be subordinate to laws passed by the national legislature. And so the states have to follow the laws set forth by the national government. So we have our information here as well now. Now on the bottom, the Great Compromise. Let me make this a little bigger here. Wonderful. Okay, so ideally from both plans, ideas from both plans are brought together to create a new government, which will take the place with the Constitution. Below are the final agreements. So place an X under that plan each idea was from. I don't like the wording there, but it works. Okay, so for example, which plan said it had 3 branches? Well, actually it was both of them, so you check mark both of those. And we choose to have 2 houses or chambers. So is that an idea from Jersey plan or Virginia plan? The House of Representatives based on population. So who had the idea to have population decide how many members you have? Is that Virginia or New Jersey? And the Senate is 2 people per state. The idea that each state would be equal, was that New Jersey or Virginia? And then over here, you can put in the 3 branches and name them. And there you go. First section is done. So they had different ideas and they came together and they said, all right, this is what we're going to do. And in the end, that worked. So that was a wonderful thing. So disaster number 1 averted. On to question number 2. Now this is an interesting question. We didn't get rid of slavery. We said that all people are created equal, and then we decided to keep slaves, which, you know, looking at it from our perspective today doesn't really work. But, you know, the idea of freedom in America is a progress over time. And so we can continually add more freedom for all people, which is good. We didn't have it originally. So problem 2, are slaves part of the recognized population? In the new Constitution, the population of a state would determine how many representatives a state received in the House of Representatives. And the Electoral College. This means more representatives means more power. Knowing this, fill in the graph below. So if you have a high population, what's that going to mean for representation? It's going to be high or low. Is that good or bad? And if you think about it, representation means how much power you have in the national government. So normally, what would you want for more power? Okay, you can fill that chart in, and we'll go on to the next part. Here we go. It needs to be decided if slaves should count as part of the population. If they do, it can dramatically shift power in the House of Representatives and Electoral College. For the following graph, choose if each side wants slaves counted or does not. Explain why they feel as they do. So for this, we're going to go over to our document here and read a bit about the Three-Fifths Compromise. So here we go. When it was decided that population would determine how many representatives a state would have in the House of Representatives, a new question arose. Do slaves count as part of the population? If they do, southern states would gain more representatives. This would cause northern states to lose representatives. On the other hand, if slaves did not count, northern states would gain more representation because of their population and have more power in the House of Representatives. More representation means more power in the House of Representatives. Southern states certainly wanted this. However, if southern states gained more representatives, it meant that representatives would be taken away from northern states. Neither side wanted to give in. So let me pull up a tool here. And let's go with yellow for our color. All right, oh, not yellow if we got a white box. All right, we'll go with blue. Let's say we have New York. And New York has 10 representatives, okay? I'm just making up a number. It's fictional, that's okay. Now, let's go with South Carolina. Let's say that South Carolina has 6 representatives. Perfect. Okay, so obviously New York has more and South Carolina has less. Whoa, what am I doing here? Hold on. I just lost my page. Let me get that back for you. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Good. All right. Well, what happens is if we now count slaves, whose number of representatives is going to go up? Well, obviously the South. The South has more slaves. So what you find is South Carolina, hey, now because they have a ton of slaves, maybe they have 8 representatives. Well, that's great for South Carolina. Now they have more power in the House of Representatives, and that's what they want. However, you can't just create 2 new seats. You need to take those seats from someone else. And so New York may be the one that loses out. And now they go from 10 to 8 representatives. And so this idea that slaves count really helps the South and it hurts the North because the North is going to lose representation and the South is going to gain it. So you can see why both sides have different feelings about that. So let's go back. And actually, you know what? We better get rid of these things because they're just in the way. So let's clear all drawings. Perfect. Okay. So, should slaves count for population to decide the number of representatives per state? Is North saying yes or no? Slaves should count or they should not? And then why do they feel that way? Is the Southern state saying yes or no? And why do they feel that way? So take a minute there. If you have a hard time understanding right now, go back in the video, or else you can simply look at the handout sheet again. And let me find it here. Yeah, read a little bit here and that'll tell you what happens. In the end, what we have is a compromise. And they decide that 3 out of 5 states would count towards the population of a state. The southern states like this because they would now have increased power in their House of Representatives. Northern states, well, they're happy that, you know, the South is going to join with them. And actually this increases taxation for the South a little bit. So the northern states like that. But look at what we're left with here. If you're a white male or woman, man or woman, you count as one person. But if you're a slave, you're basically seen as 3/5 of a person, which is really strange. But that was the compromise they made, and that allowed the Constitution to go forward and for us to move on. And this is one of the examples we're going to see of problems we have with slavery. We kind of figure out solutions at first, excuse me, but in time, it's going to be harder to find solutions. Third page. All right. Should we approve of the new Constitution? All right. So now they put out this new Constitution. You got 3 branches. You're going to have an executive, the president. You're going to have 2 houses. One's based on population. One's based on 2 votes per state. And so now the states have to ratify it. They have to decide, are we going to agree to this or not? And some people like it, some don't. So they're split. So here's some of the reasons they say that they're for it. A stronger national government could collect taxes, it could regulate trade, and it would have the power to solve a lot of the problems that we had in the Articles of Confederation. So it would finally be strong enough to actually do something. The fears, though, is that, well, a stronger national government could strip away rights from citizens. It could also take powers away from the state. And people aren't real happy about this idea of a president. They're worried he could become a tyrant. He could become a terrible person like the British king was, who would take their power away. So in the end, we have 2 groups form, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Okay, now you're going to have 3 questions asked of each group. Do they want a strong or a weak national government? Do they like the Constitution more or the Articles of Confederation? And do they feel a Bill of Rights is needed? So for this, let's go back to our documents. The first one, the Federalists, as you can see here, they favored ratification of the Constitution. Ratification means approval, so to make it the law of the land. They favored a powerful federal government. And they argued that you didn't need a Bill of Rights because the federal power was limited, so you didn't necessarily need that. So they liked the Constitution, they liked strong, powerful government. You don't need a Bill of Rights. If we go around here, you see a few other things. They want that strong central government. They want to weaken the state governments. They like the Constitution. And more urban areas are in support of the Federalists. So that gives you everything you need right here for the Federalists. So let's go on to the Anti-Federalists. Well, very different opinions. They're against the Constitution. They felt that we need a weaker national government so that states' rights aren't taken away. And they really feel a Bill of Rights is needed to protect the people. They're worried about the president becoming a king and taking away their rights. So they say, hey, if we're going to make this government, we have a specific list of all the rights that we have. So when we go down, they're more in support of the Articles of Confederation. They believe that the Constitution needs a Bill of Rights, and we see more people in rural areas are agreeing with this. So that's what we see for, both sides. And in the end, we know the Constitution passes. The Federalists are happy with that because they get the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists do give their approval, but only after they're promised a Bill of Rights will be added. And so while they're not real happy about this idea of, a president and more power for the national government, they are happy that they have a document that protects their rights and their freedoms. So that's what we have for this sheet, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to put a little quiz up as well, and you can feel free to use this sheet or the handouts page as well to answer the questions in that quiz. So have a good one, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.